thinking about dance and sight, we're thinking about the ways in which spaces are marked by bodies and how we might encounter spaces differently through dance and through the body, and how that might feed into both the touristic gaze and also the touristic experience. So while the wider field of site-based performance is well documented, the literature on site-based dance performance, so that's dance performance taking place outside the traditional theatre setting, and its creative methods is relatively scant bar a few key developments. So the work of Klurtzel and Pavlik, site dance choreographers in the lure of alternative spaces, and Victoria Hunter's comprehensive edited collection Moving Sites, and also Barbara Hunter and Klurtzel's repositioning site dance. And these texts are aiming to offer insights into the creative motivations and contextual conditions that inform this type of dance. Hunter's work in particular seeks to open the debate beyond dance studies, engaging not only site dance practitioners and researchers, but also academics from a whole range of related fields, including human geography, architectural and spatial theory, and digital performance. Hunter has raised an important question, asking how this type of site practice can inform wider discussions of embodiment, space, place, and environment. And Hunter's question is a valid one for the CultureMoves project, where we've been seeking to explore the interconnections between dance, tourism, education, and digital technology. So a survey of the literature that exists, while often pointing to the links between site dance and community, and by extension education programs, has actually revealed a lack of in-depth inquiry into the relationship between dance and tourism. However, there are occasional examples of connections between dance, cultural heritage site, and tourism. So there has, for example, been an acknowledgement of the relationship in between a growth in site outdoor dance in Australia, alongside an increase in cultural tourism, sometimes connected with World Heritage listings of significant sites, and that's Cheryl Stock's work in particular. And Stock points out that cultural activity at these sites might contain, for example, ethnically based traditional dance or light and sound spectacles designed to cater for the consumer demands of international tourism. Another example of the relationship between site dance and tourism is the choreographer April Nunes-Tucker's 2006 site dance work within the prominent tourist site of La Pedrera in Barcelona in Spain. And in her own reflective account of this work, itself informed by phenomenological theory and ideas of intersubjectivity, Nunes-Tucker points to how this tourist site facilitated what she called a feeling of connectedness through a progression of shared experiences within space and place. So here there seems to be a clear relationship between site dance, tourist site, and a sense of connection and community which merits further thinking and discussion. So in starting to undertake the research for the CultureMoves project, we've been using a starting framework to look at it through the lens of creative tourism, a term first coined by Richards and Raymonds as an extension of cultural tourism, asking whether creative experiences can somehow act as an alternative to what Richard and Marquez call more traditional tourism development strategies. So here, through Richard and Marquez's framework of co-creative tourism, they're beginning to look at the physical co-presence of creative practice and the three-way conversation that can exist in site, in tourist site, in heritage site, between artist, tourist visitor, and also inhabitant, citizen of that place. So while using this as a framework as we started undertaking research for the CultureMoves project, we had a series of questions that began to arise that were mainly centered around dance offering a different way of being and of sensing and experiencing a place. But how might dance artists claim tourism? How might dance artists claim the touristic gaze? And finally, what is the definition of the tourist? And in Coventry, for example, as we prepare here for the City of Culture 2021, we also have the wider question of the legacy of dance work in the city beyond the context of City of Culture initiatives. We can think how there's no one stable identity of the tourist, and while economically driven agendas can have huge impact on culture and tourism, dance, with its emphasis on flow and flux, might in fact be a valuable means of making connections in the fragmented cities here in the United Kingdom's current socio-political context. So the context here in Coventry, as we've been preparing for the City of Culture 2021, shows how such strategic processes, while they're designed to promote economic investment and growth, can also shed light on how arts and dance practice might have a role to play in how a city lives and grows. Examining site-based dance and aerial dance in the UK, Sarah Whatley has argued how dance both responds to the geographic and socio-political landscape and can present a form of quiet activism in the public city space. And citing Landry on the potential value of culture to urban renewal, Whatley has given significant examples of site dance and performance in the city of Coventry as a means for this. We might think of the work of Imagineer Productions and Motion House, for example. In addition, there's been a long-established tradition of dance in the city, which reaches right back to the 10 years of new dance festivals that Whatley produced throughout the 1980s and 1990s, and that evolved into a decade of summer dancing events curated by Katie Coe, and latterly biennial conferences linked to the Centre for Dance Research's Dance and Somatic Practices Journal. And this, like all the dance events since the 1980s, have taken dance onto Coventry city streets, into Coventry subways, parks, public spaces, and landmark buildings. And so the impulse behind this work is for the everyday, the non-spectacular in the city, and those roots can of course be traced to the no-spectacle pedestrian movement of Yvonne Rainer and early other postmodern dance artists, as well as political incursions of the Situationists from the 1950s onwards. And while thinking about the City of Culture enterprise, certain questions arise. Will dance be able to benefit by investment in its city's artists, in its art spaces? And will dance be able to play a fuller role in enriching the city's creative ecosystem? Or will dance be no more than a transient, decorative spectacle, as Whatley puts it, to be consumed and then forgotten? So we might begin to think about how artists have taken to the city, how they help us to experience and sense it differently. And we might even go so far as to suggest that dance, an embodiment of place, might be itself a form of quiet activism, of small and quiet acts of making that invite us to see, sense, and experience the city and its heritage differently. We might think also of artists who encourage us to look differently, to gaze differently, and here we can think about an artist such as vertical dance artist Kate Lawrence, and how her work in vertical dance on heritage sites call us to look upwards and to experience the city in a different way. Thinking on the interdisciplinary developments that choreography has undergone in the 21st century in terms of a focus on the relationships between dance, architecture, site practice, and cultural heritage, it makes a claim for how choreography within the city manifests itself in the form of a public bodily act as both artistic boundary crosser and socio-political agent. Artist Anton Myrto's Scaffolding, a workshop performance event for 7 dancers, sided with the Chapel of Many, an architectural installation designed by architect Sebastian Hicks and set inside the ruins of Coventry Cathedral as part of the Coventry Welcomes Festival Refugee Week. Grounded in an exploration of dance and architecture in terms of spatio-temporal relations and following Sarah's 2015 framework of a trans-ontology of architecture and dance, we argue for how choreographic process of making scaffolding speaks back to both the architectural space and the urban heritage site in which it is sited.
Furthermore, by offering scaffolding as an example of the coexistence of both architecture and dance on a shared continuum between space and events, we argue how the work addresses a certain experience of temporality and, by extension, because of its placement in the heritage space of the cathedral ruins, of history and of memory. We argue that the light that this particular performance work throws on temporality, history, and memory also reveals its socio-political potential, particularly in the context of Coventry Welcomes, where it offers a different experience of time and space, of flow and fixity. Through our examination of how scaffolding within its urban heritage context, we make a claim for the potential of architectural choreography in the 21st century city as a powerful political agent. The Dance Memory Space and Trace photo exhibition was co-created by a number of key stakeholders developing from a curiosity into the relationships between dance and sight. CDARE was keen to transform the space for the initial CultureMoves Lab Days and allow the invited artists and panel members to showcase one image from their practice or previous projects. In preparing these Lab Days, it emerged that there were many visuals that conveyed aspects of projects and moments which revealed highly emotional, political, or social interactions between the dancer and the place and/or the public. This point felt like an important aspect to build on and to capture, which then encouraged the CDARE team to ask the artists to contribute a text memory which was connected to the image or the project they were going to be speaking about during the Lab Day. As the team disseminated the CultureMoves Lab Days and mentioned the ideas of artists offering images and a memory, more key stakeholders were intrigued and wanted to contribute to the collection. Several artists that participated in the Lab Days contributed to the photo exhibition. However, several key stakeholders were unable to attend the events and so were invited to contribute via the photo exhibition. This exhibition has continued to grow and develop throughout the project, demonstrating the diversity of practice around dance, movement, practice, site, and cultural heritage. The exhibition is mobile and will be taken to future CultureMoves events where possible. Digital version through the Moves scrapbook dedicated to the exhibition also exists online. During 2012-2013, Lee worked with Echo Echo Dance Theatre on the creation of a unique video installation in Derry, Londonderry. Filmed from the city wall, more than 350 local inhabitants, from tea dancers to skateboarders and school children to cyclists, danced, moved, glided, and reclaimed the streets. The resulting 7-screen video projection, with a specially commissioned sound score by Graham Miller, captures both a spectacular panoramic view and an intimate portrait of the city. A central question in Without was how to respond to the history and heritage of a city which has been highly significant during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Lee pointed to the dividing lines in the city, in Londonderry, Derry, very specific lines demarcating Catholic and Protestant zones, and virtually gated communities, and how she wished for the work to find a common space to portray a city, now at peace, where these boundaries could be crossed. The project had a strong participatory and intergenerational element, with local children costumed in white, dancing through the city, akin to urban planners' white dots navigating the urban landscape. Lee wanted the work to populate the city with peaceful and communal activities, honoring the sense of its past, albeit fairly recent, history. Questions of heritage, belonging, and how a city is seen or presented were at the heart of this work. How, through dancing rather than walking, might you be able to change your relationship to the city? What can choreography do in seeming to cross boundaries through the theatrical illusion of the children as white dots, for example? Passage for Par, a dance work for 30 women created for and presented on Par Beach in Cornwall in the UK, Lee spoke of the dancers as markers for the landscape, to make the audience see the landscape in a different way. Much as the white dots in Derry also make the viewer change perspective and see the city in a different way.
So when we were investigating site practice and site dance with the various artists that we were encountering through the workshop, we wanted to visualize. I think the exhibition, the idea for the exhibition really arose because there were certain artists who wanted to contribute to these discussions but who couldn't be present in the space with us, and so wanted to contribute first of all a visual representation of some of their site practice. So we invited the artists to send us, to think about a site work or a site practice that they had done that had been particularly meaningful for them, and to send us an image that was meaningful to them from this work, and also a text-based, a text memory really, wasn't it?
A memory, and to think about how they could be part of the day and feed into the thinking around the lab days, and to share their work that is site-based. So, and attached to the image and the name of the work or the choreographer, it was a memory. So was there something that the space or that they remembered about that place or that piece? And so we invited people to share one thought, several thoughts, and that's captured in the exhibition. We have several, we have some people, like Rosemary Lee has offered a bit more context about the project, and then a memory, a very specific thought, and others have just said they didn't want to actually share a memory and just wanted to share the work. And so it was really about including their voices in whatever way, shape or form that felt good to them and representative of the work.
And I think what was really, really beautiful that came about was this process for the artists of remembering, especially in a project that's thinking about heritage and different cultural heritage and what the body remembers. And the title for the exhibition is Dance, Memory, Space and Trace. So those ideas of traces, of imprints that are left behind, of remnants of the work that still go on and exist, even when the ephemeral, transient nature of the dance, it means that the work has finished and has gone, but that there's something that remains there. And I think what's been really beautiful as well has been how the exhibition's really taken on a life of its own and evolved. So it started off with sort of a few artists from within the CDEC community and beyond, and then gradually as the project's grown, the exhibition's grown, as we've encountered more and more artists and taken the exhibition with us to certain events. Other artists have shown a desire to join the exhibition, and we've offered that invitation to them, so that the exhibition itself has constantly been evolving and growing and encompassing so many different site dance practices.
And I think another really beautiful organic part of it is something that's been true to the project is about honoring tangible and intangible cultural heritage and tourism and how that comes in and how dance celebrates that, and this idea of legacies. And I think the exhibition reflects that the legacies of their work, of what's important to them about that piece, is somehow continuing, and through this exhibition they can, it's another offering
and an afterlife, isn't it? It's these afterlives of the works.
And that's what we hope when someone visits a tourism place, that can be, can we reimagine, and how does dance help us reimagine that place? And we think that the dance artists really have an appreciation and an understanding of that, how that's then shared through the body or through choreography. So that's another really organic part of what came out of working with the artists and seeing how that's interpreted by these different artists.
Absolutely. And another layer is that we've also had, as well as the material exhibit, touring exhibit, that there's also, of course, the digital online version as well in the scrapbook form, so that it exists in two different ways. It's also been, I think, really, really beautiful.
That's right. Well. And it's honoring this embodied
reality, these embodied stories, but it's also how does that exist within a digital environment, and how does that open up this thinking to others and to contribute also to the exhibition, so that it's not only a traveling paper exhibition, but it can also exist in the digital. And I think that's been another surprise for us, that it's been really nice to see how that's evolved and how artists also interpret
and how they respond to it, and those different ways of those digital storytelling and then the bodily storytelling alongside it, and how they've begun to have a conversation, which has been great.
Yes.